It's an old church in Chicago that a new pastor stepped into a position, and the new pastor, he's starting to lead and shepherd this congregation, notices, it's pretty obvious, that on the stage there's a piano, and it's a big piano. It looks like maybe at one time it was pretty impressive, but over the years it just hasn't been maintained, and it's kind of an eyesore. It's out of tune, it's gross looking, it's got chips and cracks in it. It's just not a pretty sight. And so the pastor decided, kind of as maybe a first step of his tenure there, as a sign to the congregation that God has new things in store for them in this season, he decides, I'm going to replace that piano with a new piano. So he brings in a couple of different piano salesmen to look at the piano, trade-in value, what would it cost to get a new piano, that kind of stuff. So the first salesman comes in, looks at the piano, plays it a little bit, takes some measurements, pops the top of the piano. It's a big grand piano, pops the top, looks inside, and okay, kind of comes back to the pastor and says, Pastor, if you trade me this piano, I will trade you any piano in my shop that you want. The pastor's like, the saying, if it's too good to be true, pastor's like, this is too good to be true. There's something fishy here. I ain't buying it. So he waits for the second salesman. Second salesman comes, plays the piano, looks at it, takes some measurements, pops the top of the piano, looks inside, does his inspection, comes to the pastor and says, Pastor, if you trade me this piano, you can come to my shop and pick out whatever piano you want, and I will give it to you. Now, this pastor is no fool. Pastor goes, there's something here that I'm not getting. So he brings in an unbiased opinion. He brings in a piano technician. He says, can you look at this piano and tell me what I'm missing? So the technician comes in, looks at the piano, does the same thing the salesmen have been doing, plays it, pops the top, looks inside, does inspection, comes to the pastor and asks the pastor, what were they offering to, give you for this piano? And he said, well, they told me that I could come into their shops and pick out any piano that I wanted, and they would just take it and trade it in. And the technician said, do not take that deal. It's not a good deal for you. And the pastor is like, I am missing something. What am I missing? And the technician says, come here. And he pops the top and he points inside the piano. And inside the piano, he says, you see that name that's inside this piano? Pastor says, yes. And the technician goes, that says Steinway. He says, you see that serial number in that piano? He says, yes. He said, there's only a handful of these pianos that have been made in the entire world. And this piano is like 100 years old. He said, as long as this name is on this piano, its value is worth all the pianos that those piano salesmen have in their shops combined is not worth the same value as this piano. The pastor's like, but this piano is a hunk of junk right now. The technician says, yeah, but if you restore this piano, its value is immeasurable. And those salesmen and that technician and what the pastor came to realize is looking at that piano, they weren't looking at the value of a broken piano. They were looking at the value of what will it be when it's restored. And the name that's on that piano gives it all the value that it needs. And the conclusion of that story is Israel is worth restoring because God's name is on them. And you and I are worth restoring because God's name is on us. And every single person that you come in contact with in this world is worth restoring because they are made in the image of God.